State Representative Maurice West officially launched his campaign for Rockford mayor Tuesday, saying he's ready to lead the city into its next chapter following Mayor McNamara's decision to step down. West said McNamara's announcement prompted him to enter the race sooner than expected after previously considered a run in the future. West pledged to build on the city's recent progress while listening to residents and bringing fresh ideas to City Hall. If elected, the 67th District State Rep would step down from his seat in the Illinois House to focus on serving as mayor. McNamara congratulated West on his decision to run, praising his work as a state representative and the funding he has secured for the Rockford area.
I think we've adjusted the trajectory of our community from one that was declining to one that now is rising. And I think anyone who comes in, what we need to do is make sure that we continue to work together, that we continue to address really big problems facing our community, and we do that together. That's when we're at our best.